All right. Welcome, everybody, to the webinar today. It's good to see a few of you. We have another great panel full of experts that have experienced things and discovered things themselves. We're going to go through and talk to the panelists and see what works for them. So first we have, and I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself, but we have Nick Ferrara, Mark Hackett, Nikki Holland, and Amy McDavis, correct? All right, so welcome everybody. You know, we're all injured around here. But let's go through and let's have you guys introduce, just give a broad overview of yourself and your experience, and then we'll get into some more detail. So let's start with Nick. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, my name's Nick. So yeah, I'm dealing with autoimmune small fiber neuropathy from the Pfizer shot for just over 3 years now, tinnitus and a couple of other neurological problems. So it's been 3 years. I've made tremendous progress, but it is still an issue that I have. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. How about Mark?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark. As Nick just stated, he pretty much mine is very similar to his symptoms, except it was with Moderna with me, but neurological issues, small fiber neuropathy, the tinnitus, other autoimmune problems, and it's, as he stated, I'm much better than I was 3 years ago, but it's still ongoing. I'm not 100% where I was back on that fateful day.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Mark. Nikki, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Nikki Holland. I was injured after the Moderna vaccine 3 years ago. Different systems, respiratory, cardio, GI, urinary, and neurological. Last year diagnosed with CIDP and POTS. So better than I was, but still struggling with some things.
All right. Thank you. And Amy.
Hey there. Previously registered nurse, got the vaccine, and I've had head to toe heart problems, neurological problems, neuropathy, thyroid issues. It kind of just hit every system on the way down. It's going on about 3.5 years now for me, and making some progress, but I've grieved that I'll never be who I was before. So
Yeah, we definitely feel you on that one. Okay, so thank you all for kind of giving us, who you are. Let's start with what, and we'll go, kind of around the room here, but what were your worst symptoms? And then we'll go into, let's give us the top 3 things that benefit you the most. So give us a little more backstory. What were the worst things that happened to you? And then the top 3 things that that helped you the most. So Nick, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So there's a lot
Right?
of bad things, and kind of as Amy has mentioned, that it kind of just runs through every system of the body. If for some people, at least for me, it did over time. So things changed a lot. But I guess at its worst, really, it was very much like a Guillain-Barré type of disease, Guillain-Barré CIDP type, which, I had small fiber was found on my EMGs. There was bilateral ulnar neuropathies, but it wasn't showing anything on the legs, which would be abnormal for GBS. So it's not a true GBS, but it had a lot of that involved. Whereas I think small fiber classically wouldn't be as much weakness, but yeah, I was losing all parts of my body, legs, hands, feet, hands swelling. So a lot of the beer hands or Bayer hands, I don't know how you pronounce that, but the spotted, you guys have all seen this, I'm sure. So I don't know how much to explain, but that kind of stuff. So it really attacked my hands quite badly. So the swelling, spotted hands, when you raise your hand up above your head, you see it kind of drain back to the normal color again. So a lot of that kind of stuff, bumps on the arms, just major swelling. The ulnar nerve was brutally painful for a long time. So yeah, those were, I guess, some of the worst times. It then, about a month in, it something happened where there was kind of an event, and that's when the tinnitus started. It was like a bomb went off in my head. So tinnitus, brain zaps, just really something went into my brain basically. So brain MRIs on that showed white spots. I think something like possible microvascular demyelination or something, but you can't really pinpoint. I didn't have any brain scans before. So that's where all the confusion started. So a lot of the I guess you call it brain fog associated with like long COVID. So similar to that type of stuff. I'm sorry, what was the original source of the?
Some of your major symptoms, and then what are the 3 things that you do currently that help?
So the biggest thing for me that helped, it took about 9 months of this kind of downtrend until I started IVIG treatment, which for me helped a lot. So I did a year of that, a couple times a month for a year, and that was really the big turnaround for me. So it appears to be pretty autoimmune. I still have major flares of things with like pollen seasons and anything that taps my immune system turns it back on. I get visible twitching and very strange things. So that was really the main thing that turned me around. I started that at about month 9, and I would say about 4 months into that, it was pretty noticeable, which I think is fairly quick for IVIG. But by the 4th month, I noticed a big difference. I was getting strength back in the calf muscles that were giving out, and all these kind of weird, kind of don't have control over the limbs properly. So that was really the big thing. I tried, everything else possible that I could find, almost everything anyway, and I didn't really see a big difference with a lot of it. As far as all the supplements and all these other things to try, didn't really make a big difference. I went on courses of antibiotics thinking there was some kind of reactivated Lyme disease, just chasing everything. And the IVIG seemed to be one of the big ones that helped me, I would say. So.
Okay. That's really good. Is there any other things that you noticed? You mentioned like pollen season and stuff like that. Is there any other things in your physical day-to-day that you notice that trigger any, reactions or anything like that?
Maybe a little bit of like eating bad food. You don't feel as good, but not as much as a lot of other people. So in the beginning of this thing, I would say the first, I guess it was really up until the IVIGs, just anything, any kind of couldn't have coffee, alcohol, certain foods, everything would just be, you get, it was a mess. So I ended up with POTS and breathing problems and heart problems. And it's just a disaster. Now there's not a whole lot that triggers me outside of immune related things. So getting sick, the pollen thing, those are kind of the big things that will throw me off, I would say. If I catch a cold or something, I'll notice things shift in weird ways. Mm-hmm. I think certain medications maybe could kind of do stuff like that, but it's mostly that. So now, I might have a little bit less tolerance to coffee, but I can drink coffee, eat foods, don't really have an issue with that. I don't have any problems going into the sun. A lot of people have issues with reactions to sun and skin issues. So I'm doing pretty well, I would say, with things that trigger it outside of just immune system stuff. So I've tried allergy medicines. They don't seem to do a whole lot for me, but it's something that I should probably maybe see an immunologist about. Steroids have never worked well for me. They appeared to make me get worse in the beginning. So I've kind of stayed away from them since that.
All right. Interesting. So from like, where were you at your worst versus where you are now in your abilities and what you're able to do?
Well, at its worst point, it was, I was never in a wheelchair, but it got to the point where I was like, there's not much further you can go, where I can't walk, I can't use my legs right. But then the next day, it comes back not normal, but the symptoms are very up and down in a strange way, which is, I think, one of the things that was hard in the beginning for them because they hadn't seen this before, that, Guillain-Barré doesn't do that. You don't have these symptoms and then the next day, your strength kind of half returns. So I think it's some kind of blood flow thing, because you'd see the limbs swell up too. So so at its worst, it was just like basically like it doesn't seem like there's any way out at all. You're done. Now I'm pretty functional. So I had these issues. I have weakness and twitching, but I work a normal life. I have a desk job, so the weakness thing isn't really a big deal. And I do a lot of physical activities, not to the level that I did before, but I could pretty much do anything I want. So I would say I live a pretty normal life now, which did not seem possible in the past. Someone asked in here if the IVIG helped the tinnitus. It definitely did not. It made it worse actually for a little while, which the IVIG treatment, by the way, I always want to say this when I tell people about this, it did help me. It's rough, it's not good, and it doesn't help a lot of people. So it's certainly an option, but it's not really, I've talked to, I don't know if it's 50-50 or what it is, but it's one of those things. And I think that treatment's just historically been that way, but it helped me with a lot of these symptoms. It's helped other people with the same symptoms. And then there's other people with the same symptoms that doesn't help. But so it's a difficult one. There's different brands, there's different dosings, everybody's body's different. It is a human blood product, or it's made from human blood. So I think that just the way that your body reacts to it is, you just don't really know what you're going to get. As far as tinnitus, I don't think I know anybody that the IVIG helped with tinnitus for some reason. It's just not, whatever that did, I don't know if it damaged a nerve or what, but I think that over time, I guess that's kind of improved a little bit, but that's pretty much the one thing that is there all the time, never went away. But I think maybe I've learned to get used to it a bit. I don't think about it a lot anymore, but it's definitely there.
Yeah, it happens. I had it a little bit before, being military and stuff, flying jets, shooting guns, dropping bombs, all that. But then it became even more like after the injury. But so I guess it just feels like you just kind of get used to it. I don't know what it is, but I haven't found anything that helped me either. But kind of going down that line, someone asked a question about what doctor prescribed IVIG for you, but I want to take it to another level of what doctors do you feel helped you, and do you have any recommendations for anybody on here? Because I know it's been a struggle for a lot of people to find doctors that will believe them, that will help them, not just throw a bunch of drugs at them or whatever, or play guessing games. So do you have any recommendations of doctors that have helped you, or in this question got IVIG for you?
Yeah, so the doctor that helped me, and I went to a lot of doctors in the beginning, and they just really didn't know what to do. So the one that ended up helping me a lot is in Connecticut. His name is Dr. Josh Hesbani, and he is a neurologist. There was another guy I saw briefly, Dr. Manning, I think out of Southington. I'll have to look up his name here, but I saw him briefly, and he seemed to really at least understand, and said, okay, well, we could look for some things. At the time I was with Hesbani too. This guy was I forget if immunologist or something like that. Not immunologist, one of those, but I ended up just going with Hesbani because he started the IVIG process. So he helped me out a lot with it. And what his approach was good in that before I went to him, I saw, I was in the ER a lot, obviously, like a lot of us when this was first exploding. I went to a bunch of other neurologists. I went to one who did, he did the EMG and the ulnar nerves were messed up. He did the brain scan and there's white spots. He did a bunch of other stuff. And I'm like, well, everything that we found, everything you've tested, it shows something. And he's like, okay, goodbye. And that was it. So he just no information.
What?
Well, yeah. And I had told him, I was learning about looking for small fiber and IVIG and some of these autoimmune tests from other people that had gone through this before me, and he wasn't familiar with it. So I went through a few people like that. By the time I got to Hesbani, his approach basically was, he said, well, you have all these tests, and there's only other thing you could really check for is small fiber neuropathy. So I said, okay, great, let's do that. That came back positive in multiple locations, and then he did the Washington University blood tests for FGFR3 and TSHDS, which is, it's sort of research phase. It's been around for a while, but I don't really know if anybody knows how they relate, but they're thought to be autoimmune along with small fiber. So that came back positive on the FGFR3. And the treatment that's been known for that in the past is IVIG or plasmapheresis or immunosuppressants. So that's, it's basically, it's like, and if you read about it, it's sort of in the, at some points they talked about it being like a GBS-like syndrome. They don't really know, but it's all, a lot of this stuff is similar in the way what it does and how it reacts. So yeah, so he got that ordered, and then they obviously, the insurance doesn't want to do it. They fight it. It's not like directly, they don't want to pay for it. It's very expensive.
Mhm.
So he did the appeals and he showed the blood test and he got it and for me, and it worked. So as far as that, I know a couple of people friends that I've referred to him, and as far as I know, a few people have gone on IVIG and it works for some and not others. There isn't really, and I've moved, so I haven't really kept in touch with him too much. But I'm not really sure that was his approach, which worked for me. He did also offer some, I forget, it's like the standard neurological pain type medicines. But that was it. So we said, let's just look for some stuff, found some stuff, and these are the treatments that are for it. And it's pretty direct. There really wasn't a whole lot of discussion as to why or what, or just you find this, let's go with it. And I got very lucky that it worked for me. So, and like I said, IVIG, everybody's different, but it's not pleasant. I mean, that first month it's just brutal. It actually flares the symptoms worse. And each one, I think by the third or fourth month, my body started to get used to it. Didn't have a lot of problems. And by the fourth month, like I said, it started to be noticeable. And then I did it for a year. And I actually would have probably, I probably would have stayed on it, but the insurance was getting switched, and I just said, well, it's time to take a break. And I still have issues. Maybe if I stayed on it for 2 years, it would have been better, but that's how it ended. And you'd have to re-approve it, get approved on the new insurance. And so this is just kind of the path I've gone. And there's been some bad times where, like, when the springtime, I think after the first year I had stopped, once the springtime thing came, I think, which would actually be last year, is like, oh my God, this is all coming back. But then it kind of leveled out, and now we're kind of in that now where it's not as bad, but I moved states. So the tree pollen or whatever triggers it is a little bit different, but I have noticed the same thing. And I'm just kind of like, okay, hopefully this will go away. I did also get COVID in February. So, a lot of this stuff, it happens after that too. So it could be something that triggered it, but I'm thinking it's the timing. I'm starting to notice that pattern. So we'll see if it goes away. But yeah, so anyway, speaking of what it was, FGFR3 is the autoantibody that came up with it. So if you look up small fiber neuropathy, FGFR3, there's some information about that. And my opinion is it's not great. I mean, there's not a lot known about it, but my opinion is if somebody has these symptoms, that's the path I took. Look for the small fiber, look for the autoantibodies associated with it, and see what you come up with. Some people do plasmapheresis for that. I think that's a great option too. It's just for some reason it's hard to get that covered more than IVIG even, which is also crazy hard to get it covered. Somebody asked if it's covered under insurance. So yes, it is, but it's, they want to fight you on it. I think the billing for that treatment was like $1 million. Now they don't actually pay all that. How yeah, it's like 950,000 over the year. But they don't pay. You know how they do that where they're like $950,000, and then it was like an $800,000 discount or something crazy. However they make it list, but they certainly paid out a lot of money for it. So that's why it took me 9 months to get it. But that was it. I was like, this is what I got to try, because other stuff too. I was looking at dysautonomia POTS, it had like CRPS type symptoms. A lot of the stuff I looked up, because what you have to do is try to figure this thing out yourself. A lot of it points back to IVIG being a potential treatment. So it was like, it's unknown territory, but I don't know what else to do. I did other weird stuff. I did I took monoclonal antibody infusions, which I thought would maybe help. If it's for COVID, and something that some people said it helped or not. It didn't seem to do anything to me. But I look back on that as one of the more risky things, because that was also new. But I had no choice. I mean, I was going on months of my body not working. Yeah. And one of the other things that actually I didn't mention was a big help for me was around month 7, I went on fluvoxamine, which is a small dose of it, but it made a lot of help. It made a lot of difference for the brain zap issue. So that was one of the medications that the FLCCC doctors, COVID doctors, were saying helps with some people with COVID. You know, I didn't have COVID, but I held off for a long time because I didn't want to go on. That's you know, it's an SSRI and you have withdrawal issues, but it really helped a lot with the brain shock issue, which if you look up withdrawals from SSRIs, they do that too. So there's something related. I don't know if it's like a serotonin imbalance or what it is, but that really was a big help with that, and it even helped with the nerve pain. So I think a lot of those, like Cymbalta is one of those ones too. I don't know why, but they're not in the same family, but those type of pills will help with nerve pain. So it made a big difference for nerve pain in my arms, and the brain zap thing, it helped a lot. And then IVIG started to give me some of the strength back, and you know, and a lot of the burning and stuff sort of just went away a bit over time. So you know, with small fiber, you get a lot of burning, and I had burning on my scalp, behind my eyes, but blurry vision. I mean, it's under your teeth. It's really horrendous. So I would say that the IVIG for me helped. It really helped the GBS-ish seeming stuff first. It seemed like I noticed strength coming back, and then I think over time the small fiber classified stuff just seemed to get better. I still have, like, my hands feel like I slapped concrete, so it's like they're not normal, but I can do most things that I can do. If I'm flared up, I can't really play guitar well, but I can. You know, I have a lot of my dexterity back. The ulnar nerve thing is fine, which is crazy because that was just like brutal. And I want to talk too much, and I want to give you guys some time, but I do want to say one other thing about this that made a big difference for me is that in the beginning, when all this was swelling and it was almost like stuff just pooling into your hands, I really got a lot of help from lymph node drainage massage, which went to a physical therapist who does this, and it almost seems like nonsense. I don't know if you guys know about it. It's very a light brushing technique, but it does help to somehow, it just makes things flow around your body more. And I would notice that I would get, my hand numbness would be a little bit better, but it would come right back like a day later. But it seemed to give me some kind of help. And I had lymph node swelling, all the stuff that was sort of originally said to come with this. So it was major blood flow issues. Now, all this time later, I actually try to go get deep tissue massages, which I wouldn't have been able to do that back then. But now I do that, and that helps a lot. I don't know how, but it kind of gets stuff flowing through my arms and hands. And you'll even see sometimes it'll actually the next day it will kind of almost puff up red, and then it kind of drains it out. So massages have been big for me, but it does have to be somebody who can really get in there and break up these, like this specific parts of the arm. There's weird spots where they somehow get things flowing. So I don't know if it's a lymph node thing or what it is, but that's helped me a lot. And it has to be like specific. Only specific people seem to be able to break those things up, whatever it is that's in there. Like your body feels like your blood turns to oil or something, and they somehow get it flowing again. So,
well, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that you found some things that worked, and hopefully the people listening can, you know, if they haven't found something, they can use the things that you've done to help them as well. So awesome. Thanks for sharing so much. I love it. Good stuff. Mark, I'm going to go with you. Same question. Start with what was your lowest? Let's go with what was your lowest and what was it like versus where you're at now? And then what are at least 3 things that you feel like have benefited you the most?
Okay. Well, probably it's hard to say. I can say that it was like with a month after I got the second shot. Actually, it was when I got the first shot, nothing happened. The second shot, you know, they were warning everybody, well, you might have flu symptoms and then your arm's going to hurt a little bit more than the first one. So it's like, okay, whatever. This was, you know, whatever, cattle driving us through in a big parking lot and you didn't get out of your vehicle. So they gave me this shot and, you know, no big deal. And got home. That was probably like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. When I got home, yeah, my arm was starting to get a little sore. It's like, well, okay, no biggie. So went to bed that night. And then I woke up in the middle of the night, sat up, and was screaming. If it was feeling like somebody was stabbing me in my shoulder with a pair of scissors. I mean, just out of nowhere, it really hurt badly. And then it just stopped. Well, that was weird. Went to bed, and then from that period on, everything just deteriorated. This arm started, the really pain and the soreness went down this arm. And it got about a week later down the right arm, and then eventually started affecting my legs. I'd do daily walks, and it got to the point I couldn't walk. And about a month later, I woke up one morning and I thought I'd slept bad. So I tried to roll over. It was on my back, and I thought, well, I just need to move over it. Well, I couldn't move. I was completely debilitated. Couldn't lift my shoulders up. Couldn't lift my legs up. Couldn't move my arms up. It was just all frozen. And it took about 45 minutes later, I was able to finally get a leg over, but I still couldn't extend my arms out or up. I couldn't dress myself, and managed to get into the kitchen and still couldn't do anything. I couldn't get anything out of the cabinets. It was just like my elbows were pinned to my chest. So as the day proceeded, I finally said, I got to get to the hospital. So, I got to the hospital, and they ran tests and poked and prodded on me, and it came back. They tested for the C-reactive protein and the sedimentation rate. And I said, yeah, you're having a systemic inflammation response. You need to go see a rheumatologist, whatever. I still hadn't put 2 and 2 together. It was the vaccine that caused this, because it was over that month period that just kept getting bad. So they put me on steroids, which was, it instantly knocked it down. Put me on, I was on 20 milligrams a day, and it's like, okay, well, I felt great. But then as it was on a medical dose pack, and as the week continued and the dose got smaller, then it came back. But as this was going on, it went from being so much muscle pain turning into nerve pain. So like Nick, I don't know how it would happen for him, but I would wake up in the morning and it felt like somebody had banged my elbows with a ball peen hammer, just excruciating nerve pain in my forearms. And so, dealing with that, and then the numbness and the burning started coming on. So it was weird how it went from this really achy pain to this nerve pain and burning coming on, and then all the weird sensations, like something's biting you, or the tinnitus, like something's rushing your ears. But I went to one rheumatologist. He looked at me and says, I can't help you. You need to go to the Mayo Clinic or the NIH. He just flat out said, I can't touch this. Found another rheumatologist, and they ran 12 pages worth of blood work, from everything from Lyme disease to rheumatoid arthritis to lupus, just the whole thing. And it came back, and they were, and they told me, says, Mark, we don't know what's going on here. So your case is special. And then they just finally acknowledged it was a vaccine. But I couldn't get them to do any of the treatments like Nick had spoke about, the monoclonal antibodies that they were giving people for COVID. They wouldn't do that. And I'd even contacted Genentech about this. So it was just this long ordeal, and it just kept getting worse. I mean, it was really painful, weakness. I couldn't open a bottle of water. Didn't have the strength to do that. It was just a lot of pain, and I couldn't work, and just stayed in the house. And it was a lot of pain, very painful that first year. And then was having difficulties with an insurance company I was with, and it ended up having to switch insurance companies. But, the rheumatologist said I needed to go see a neurologist, and it took about a year and a half to finally get to see a neurologist, and for them to do because of the crappy insurance company I had. It was a huge mess. And they did the EMGs and nerve conduction studies and the other studies. I was having a lot of balance problems. I've fallen probably about 6 times, and that's gotten better. But finally got to another neurologist, and she did the small punch biopsy, and it came back, of course, positive for small fiber neuropathy. So I've had that problem. And then I've got gastro or GI issues. Been having pain in my gut, and had a colonoscopy, and it came back, and there's all this inflammation in my intestine. And the gastroenterologist is like, okay, what's causing it? And they're like, we don't know, but you need, so then they said, you need to go have a CT scan. So we did a CT scan, and then some issues came back, and they called back the next week, said, you need to go have a MRI. So now they found all these lesions on my kidneys. And again, it's like, where's all this coming from? So like everybody else has been through the ringer, things have gotten better. Things have slowly improved. The tinnitus is still there. The pain in my hands and feet and the rest of my body is that soreness. is still there. You know, mornings are always the worst. It really hurts to get up in the morning. Now we've gotten back into warmer weather. That helps a lot. The cold weather in particular would really trigger episodes, and it would just really awful, you know. And I was on pain meds that would help knock down the severe pain in my hands, but I'm off of that. But yeah, it's just been an ordeal. So I just kind of deal with it now. It's like this is the new normal. I'm not, like I said before, I'm not back to 100%. I'm doing a lot better now, and can play the guitar again somewhat. You know, that first year couldn't play at all. It just, my hands would not function, and that's gotten better. I'm still not where I was, but you know, but the drugs that I have tried, I haven't done any IV type treatments, you know, because of the insurance and the physicians just not wanting to try it out. You know, my rheumatologist, he was very honest with me. He said, Mark, he says, I don't know how to treat this. He says, we're learning as we go. But he said, you know, we try some other things, but he says, I really don't know what to do. So the things that worked for me the best initially were the steroids, taking steroids every day. That would knock the inflammation down and made it possible for me to somewhat function. But I had to get off the steroids because they were making me diabetic, shoot my glucose up. They took me off of that. So now I am on methotrexate, which is another immune suppressant type drug. The problem with methotrexate is it makes your hair fall out. So they put me on. There's another drug you take with a leucovorin that helps to keep the hair from losing. And that was another thing. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but probably about 3 months after the second shot, my hair fell out in clumps. Not just a little bit in my brush. I take a shower and it was just, I could pick it up by handfuls. So I believe it was a delusion, I think is the name of it. I don't know if anybody else experienced that too, but that was very depressing to have that much hair fall off at once. And it came back, and now it's kind of falling off again. I think it's some of these drugs. So, but like I said, I haven't had anything that serious as far as that. The only thing I've been on is steroids, which they pulled me off of and put me on this methotrexate. As far as pain meds, it's been a gabapentin, which seems to help. I take 3 of those at night along with a sleep aid, one of these. And that's what helps the best I have found is getting sleep. That does the most to help. And it took a long time to be able to finally sleep, because I couldn't sleep at all. I'd wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning and then I couldn't go back to sleep. And this went on for a long period of time. So the insomnia was really bad. But so other things I tried was a low dose how do you say it? Naltrexone, I believe is what it is. They didn't do anything. Another pain med doctor put me on baclofen and pregabalin. That's what they give to people with MS. They were thinking that maybe I had MS. That kept me up at night, so I'm back off of that. The last thing that I had done, I'd been off steroids for probably a year, finally weaned off of the steroids. But one of the last rheumatology visit I went to, I was hurting pretty bad. So they gave me a shot of Kenalog, which is a real strong injectable form of a steroid. And that knocked the pain down, the inflammation down for about a month and a half. And it's come back, but it's not as bad as it was as prior to the shot. So I may get another one of those the next time I go see the rheumatologist, that just to feel normal for about a month anyways. The other thing that I was on opioids, those type of medications, but you know that those cause their own set of problems. So I'm not on that anymore. I try to avoid that type of medications. And then I take for the pain in my gut, I take a diclocyclamine, I believe is what it is to knock that down. They, like I said, you know, a lot of physicians, and I know everybody else has experienced this, you get in front of them and you start asking questions about this, and you say, you know, you think the vaccine caused it, and they get the blank look on their face, and then they don't want to see you anymore. You know, they just kind of don't want to touch it. And I've had 2 neurologists. The first neurologist that did the EMG and the nerve conduction test after that, never saw her again. The second one, the same thing. She was very apprehensive about this, acknowledging that the vaccine could have caused this. But that was probably the worst part. There was waking up that morning and not being able to do. That was frightening, because I'm single and live with a dog, and I didn't know what was going on. But it's just all those other problems everyone else has had: the fatigue, the myalgia, the roaring. Had a couple of times where I'd get these really loud noises in my ears. Just like somebody, it was just this loud noise, it would come and then go and then back and forth. And then the same thing, the weird things like something's biting you or whatever. You look down and nothing, but that's all subsided. So I'm back, on the mend, but I'm hoping in another year, I'll be that much closer to where I was 3 years ago, keep on going. But I can tell you, in my case, in that first year, I joined a program by UT Health. They were monitoring people's antibodies. So I was having tests done, antibodies drawn every 6 weeks. And this was probably 9 months after the second shot. And even being on the immunosuppressants, they tested it. It was at one level at the first time they took it, probably 6 months, 8 months later. A month and a half later, it dropped down a little bit. And then the next one, it shot back up 30%. So that was telling me that my body was still producing these spike proteins, even though, all that inflammation was still being caused by these spike proteins, even though I hadn't had a shot in a year. And it also proved that I'd never had COVID up to that point. Now I did get tested a couple of weeks ago. I suspected I'd caught COVID back in January because I had a really bad sore throat with this cold that I caught. And I thought, that's weird how bad this feels. So I had the test and they confirmed I did catch COVID, or I had the N protein. So in a way, I'm kind of relieved. It's like, okay, well, now I got natural immunity. I don't have to get, the 9th booster or whatever. But that's all that's worked for me. But the most important thing is getting good sleep. That helps more than anything else. I've cut out alcohol. I eat pretty well. I try to get some exercise, riding a bike, get out in the sun. That's the other thing that's important I found, is getting some sunlight too. But that's my story.
And that's good. I find sleep is my biggest help as well. So that's good. Thanks for sharing all that. Let's go to Amy. So Amy, tell us kind of where you were at when you started, where you're at now, and the 3 biggest things that helped, and then maybe any recommendations for doctors that you've seen that have been beneficial.
Hey there. So I was hospitalized within 16 hours after my second Moderna. I lost the ability to use my legs. I was spinning. I could hardly, I was vomiting. It was, by the time I got to the hospital, I couldn't stand kind of GBS symptoms. I was admitted for 5 days and they said I had labyrinthitis, which they didn't test for anything else. They didn't do a spinal or any GBS type symptoms. And then sent me home. During the first year, the only thing, and I progressed, so I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand, I lost, I'll be honest, I was in diapers for the first year. I couldn't even get out of bed. It was rough. I couldn't have any light. So I lived in my bed, hardly able to even turn side to side, not able to control my bladder, and in the dark. I couldn't have any light, any sound, any even a fan would hurt my skin. And the only thing in that first year that seemed to help me at all was steroids. So when I was on prednisone, I was able to actually, I got a like a mechanic's chair. So I would get off my bed onto the mechanic's chair, wheel over to the bathroom, and I was able to get to the bathroom. But then the minute they took me off of the prednisone or my taper ended, I was right back in bed. I couldn't lift my head without vomiting. I couldn't turn my head, like I had ice packs. It was just horrible. The entire second year I was on prednisone, and during that time I was able to get up and start doing a little bit more. I saw, you name it, I saw neurologists, ones that would accept me, because you say vaccine injury or suspected vax, and folks in my state denied my referral. I have a neurologist finally that I found that's 4 hours away. But even then, trying to get, the vaccine injury, I've seen rheumatologists, all my labs are off the charts. Like the gentleman said earlier, I couldn't stay on the prednisone because of my blood sugars. They tried to put me on methotrexate injections once a week. That didn't help. My elbows, I did get nerve conduction studies, and I did have the ulnar lesions like Nick had. But really nobody wanted to touch me. I would go to these doctors and literally was on 3 full pages of medications, 3. I was on over 40 prescription meds at one time.
Oh.
And they just kept throwing them at me. And I went to the cardiologist, and I'm like, my heart's just not, this vibration, something is happening. And they're like, oh, it's fine. It's not going to kill you. So I'm like, okay. So being on the steroids, I was able to, think a little bit, and I'm like, man, I'm a nurse. I got to look this up. So I just went to drugs.com and I started looking up all my meds. I typed them in with interactions, and 4 meds that I was on the side effect it's called QT elongation. So it could stop my heart at any time. And then with those 4 meds that had that reaction, the interaction between them caused QT elongation, which could, again, stop my heart at any time. So when I looked at that, I took it upon myself to literally wean myself off all meds. I currently am on hydroxychloroquine, which I'm weaning myself off of, and that will be the last medication that I take. But the thing that has helped me the most is getting off the meds. Hands down, without a doubt, it was like night and day. I'm stuck in bed. I can't hardly do anything. Started weaning off meds. I'm able to have light on. And several folks know, I couldn't even look at my phone. I couldn't take phone calls. Any light sound really bothered me. But getting off the meds, my diet, going all organic, and I don't push myself. Before I would get frustrated, because I was a nurse, that's what we do. We push ourselves, we rock and roll and roll up our sleeves and do what we have to do. But listening to my body, hands down, if my body says, sister, you need to sit down, I sit down. And so cold weather is definitely a trigger for me. My hands go white. I believe I have Raynaud's, but again, nobody in my state will really see anybody for a vaccine injury. But so yeah, I now treat myself at home. I make my own tinctures. I do all herbals. I don't. It's really sad being a registered nurse. I don't trust American healthcare right now. There's a lot of providers I don't trust. And I had a TIA last month, and I won't go to the local hospital. It's just a real sad situation.
Yeah, that is rough. But you're doing better now, right? As far as you can move.
Yes,
like
I'm
that.
getting up, not as fast. I still have a walker. I still use my wheelchair, not as much, but if I have to be out and about, I do have my wheelchair.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're at least able to get up and move and function somewhat. That sounds really rough. Any recommendations for doctors or not yet?
I mean, I'm not claiming to be a doctor. I didn't go to medical school, but I'm treating myself. So you have to
I feel
listen to
you.
your body and go with what your body's telling you.
I feel you. Awesome. Well, thank you. Nikki, how's it going?
It's going good.
All
Yeah.
right. Can you share with us kind of a little bit of your story, kind of where you were at the worst, and then versus where you're at now, and any recommendations for us?
Yeah. So my worst, I was on the ventilator multiple times with respiratory failure, and tracheostomy because I had laryngeal spasms. My throat would close off, and I developed uh, like blood clots. I also developed heart rate and blood pressure issues. It would go up and down. Later diagnosed with the POTS, but then during this time also my stomach stopped emptying. Developed gastroparesis. The nerve to my stomach wasn't triggering it to empty, so had a lot of nausea, GI issues. Ended up with feeding tubes. My nerve to my bladder stopped working to trigger it to empty and tell me when I needed to go. Went through catheters, and eventually I have currently a bladder stimulator, which triggers through electrical impulse to empty. Um, Went through having oxygen, wheelchair bound, bed bound at the very beginning. With my worst, I couldn't even roll over in bed by myself. Had to have help. And all this was very difficult for me. I was a full-time physical therapist, athletic trainer, 3 teenagers, single mom. So, yeah, it was very difficult in everything. I had more of the respiratory GI stuff at the beginning, and then it went in and the blood clots, and then it went in to more of the neuro stuff that I noticed. And I was having muscle atrophy, sensation issues, neuropathy, pain, cramping, twitching. I couldn't feel where I was placing my legs on the ground, like proprioception, sensation issues, um, balance issues, things like that. So that was probably my worst. I'm definitely better than I was. I currently use like a crutch or a walker around the house, or if I go out for longer distances, like Walmart or something, I'll use a wheelchair. Smaller stores, I can use my assisted device. I don't wear oxygen except at night. You see that I'm holding my throat because I got my tracheostomy out last year, 3 years of having it. I finally got it out last week.
Awesome.
And yeah, so definitely better. I took a risk at getting it out because they can't guarantee they're not going to happen, but I haven't had one in a year. And so sometimes you've got to take what the doctor recommends and also look at your quality of life too, and what you need to do for you. But the things that have helped me, the biggest thing, like Nick, currently I'm on about 8 or 9 months of IVIG, and that has been my biggest help. I do it every 3 weeks. 90 grams is what everybody's a little different. Mine's 90 grams. It's 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. I didn't have as many side effects, had some headaches, flu-like symptoms for about 24 hours to 36 hours. And then with every time I did it, it would get less and less. And I would have, like when I first started out, I noticed improvements in energy, respiratory, all the systems, neuropathy, everything. and it would last for a few days to a week. And now I'm at the point where it's lasting me through the whole 3 weeks or right up to the end. I'll notice some decline, but that regression is not like the regression I was having before. I will regress some, but then when the next treatment, I improve a little bit more. So my regression is a little less. So upward trend. So that's been the biggest thing for me. Took me 2 years to finally get a diagnosis of CIDP, in which the insurance would approve me to have the IVIG. And I see the bill, and it's around about $25,000 every 3 weeks. My insurance, I'm lucky, pays 100% of it. So, but the neurologist prescribed it. Had to go out of state to find one for a diagnosis and everything, because my neurologist here, not so much dismissive. Anyway, primary care is the one actually that is just carrying out the orders for insurance purposes for in-state. Other things that have helped me that are more simplistic in nature. Well, let me come back to that. Some other drugs that have helped, obviously the steroids. I was on major steroids, and that did help, but had a lot of side effects for me. I was also on muscle relaxers like baclofen, on Lyrica pregabalin for nerve pain. I even had narcotics, over-the-counter pain medicine, anything to try to make it tolerable day to day. I'm on blood thinners, breathing treatments that helped me when I had respiratory stuff were albuterol and budesonide. And then as far as I'm on antihistamine that I take daily, twice a day, similar to Singulair. It's Zarafilukast or Accolate. And let's see, what else? Blood pressure medicine. I'm on something that lowers my blood pressure, lisinopril and a beta blocker to lower my heart rate. However, let me tell you, these things I have definitely minimized. I was on over 30 medicines, and I have found that just like Amy, there's tons of side effects, as everybody knows. And some of those things that I was having or things that were getting worse were causing them. So I've gone down to the bare minimum of what I need and can't wean off at the moment. Some things like supplements I've tried. I did ivermectin, low dose natraxone, hydrochloroquine. Those helped for about 3 months. I had a lot of improvements, and then I went back on that roller coaster of regression. So it was short term for me on that. Some other things that I have tried were the kind of jotted them down. L-lysine, quercetin, Paratrex, omega-3, ashwagandha, licorice root, vitamins, glutathione, NAC, and the list goes on. So I've tried multiple supplements, different times, combinations, and some of them I saw a little bit of improvement, but overall, I didn't see tons of improvement. And I felt like I was just switching in numbers from pharmaceuticals to supplements, and I was taking meals of supplements. So some of them I've weaned off a lot of them. The major ones that have helped me are basic things like the vitamin D, C, B, and then hydration. Hydration has been huge. Something as simplistic as water. I try to do half my body weight in water every day, 100 ounces, 1 ounce per half of body weight pound. I've also noticed that when I do treatments or I start to feel fatigue or more leg pain and cramping, I do things like liquid IV hydration drinks, mixes. I found, as simple as those are, the electrolytes are huge in nerve health and circulation and overall health. I've done detoxification. Those would help short term, but then everything would come back. Obviously, eating eating healthier is huge. I mean, that's just common sense for us. Low fat processed foods. I struggle with that, especially that I had issues with feeding. But I do notice improvements when I do stick to that diet more. Um, Intermittent fasting helps me. Long-term fasting makes me worse. I do 16/8. Every once in a while, I'll do a 20 hour on, 4 hour off, or 48 hours is the max I can do without it really affecting me. Another thing is not staying sedentary. As much as my mind tells me and my body wants me to stop, sometimes there is a point at which you have to keep going, and not being sedentary and having physical activity has helped me within moderation, um, which is hard to do sometimes. Epsom salt baths are huge. Elevation, compression stockings, those help a whole lot as well. I recently started red light therapy, red light and infrared light therapy that helps with my nerve pain in my legs. I've also tried hyperbaric. It helped temporarily, not long term. And also recently, about a month ago, at grounding sheets, and it has helped. So those are kind of my thing. And my biggest thing was, of course, the IVIG I started.
Awesome. Any this is good. I think we got this theme going of almost like natural, like get some of those natural things, listen to your body, and your body will tell you what you need. That's great. Any recommendations for doctors for anybody out there?
I'm in Tennessee. I went to Nashville Vanderbilt system, which is supposed to be the best in the state, kind of for that. Had no luck when it came to neurologists. Bigger hospitals have more technology and more tests they can do, but definitely shuns the norm of not rejecting vaccine or anything that might reject it. My other doctors seemed pretty good and all were great to manage things, but they were limited on their knowledge and what to do. The neurologist I went to see was one out of New York that Bree and React 19 helped me get in contact with. Dr. David Younger, great guy, cut and dry to the point, but was able to, explain things that were going on. And not only the neurological CIDP, but kind of how autonomically all these systems were shutting down because of inflammation. So that's kind of where I went with that one.
Nice. Okay. Well, good. Well, everybody, thank you so much for sharing. Is there any questions out in the audience that anybody has? Or did all those get answered? You guys did a great job. There's no questions.
Uh-huh.
I have a comment actually.
Yeah, please.
Something I think I didn't mention is that in my case, I did the biopsy. It showed small fiber in multiple locations. I did the biopsy again, I think 6 months later on IVIG, and all of the locations showed as healed. So it's at least good to be able to see that on paper. I knew I was doing a lot better, but to see it show up on paper, it appears that it actually did regrow the nerves, or I guess if you stop the attack, maybe they regrow. But they take the spots right next to the old ones, and they all showed as no more small fiber. So that was pretty interesting to see that happen. So apparently it's measurable as well, the effects of it in some people.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Someone asked, what did the grounding sheets help with, Nikki?
The grounding sheets helped a lot with. I have difficulty with the pain and neuropathy and fatigue. And I have found that with those, not only do I sleep sounder, I get up less during the night, and I wake up more rested. Throughout the day, it takes a little bit longer, or I have less neuropathy and leg pain. I'm still a newbie to the natural alternative world, as I came from more of a medical background. So I'm always leery of what things are helping and what aren't. So I tried it out for a good few weeks to make sure in my brain it wasn't a fluke, and could prove to myself. And that's the only thing I changed. So that is what I'm attributing those improvements to.
Yeah, a lot of times with the grounding sheets, or just plain grounding yourself naturally outside, take your shoes off, walk around, meditate, whatever. There are studies that have shown, they did scans of the body and shown decreased inflammation in the body. So grounding sheets is one of the things they developed that, but you can just go outside with your shoes off and like hang out like on the grass or on the dirt or rock, and that helps. So that's awesome. Nikki, someone's asking, how many sessions of hyperbarics did you do?
I can't remember exactly. I did about 3 to 4 months worth, like maybe 3 times a week. I had a friend that I met through all this that was locally that used it for her son who's autistic. And so it's a home therapy chamber she let me use for a few months while they were moving. And like I said, it helped at the beginning, but then I started to regress and I got to the point I couldn't even get in and out of it. So as far as the brand of the sheets, it was the Earthing Company, is the one that I used.
Cool. Yeah, I think the hyperbarics, it kind of varies for everyone, and then also the type of chamber you're in as well. I did 20 sessions in a like full up medical chamber, and it seemed to help me. But after 20 sessions, I mean, that's like, I can't remember the price, but it's expensive. And doing it every day, I did it every day. I think it was like 5 days a week or something like that. And so it gets expensive pretty fast. But I did 20, and it seemed to help me pretty good. But yeah. All right, there's another question in here. Those who test positive, I assume for small fiber neuropathy, do you have necessarily numbness as one of the symptoms?
It's pretty common for it. I think a lot of us do. I don't know if that's required. I think probably not, because I know there's some people that didn't have any of this, like a lot of the weakness type stuff that a lot of us have had, but they'll have just pure burning. And I think that falls into the category of small fiber too. So for me, it was numbness and a lot of us, but I think you can have just burning skin without the numbness. So it's a hard one to really categorize, but I believe that is the case sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have numbness in my feet, going up my, up my calves or lower legs, and then in my hands, and the pain as well. And like I said, I did the ulnar neuropathy. That was what was really bad, and that's as great, fortunately it's subsided. But the numbness, yeah, it's definitely there. And where did she go? She was talking about balance and not being able to find your feet. I've had that problem as well, and I've stubbed my toes. I don't know how many times, because I'm not sure. I have to look at them, learn to look where I'm walking, and so I don't kick the baseboards. But yeah, the numbness definitely is still present as well. But I don't know. I think it affects everybody a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So if I could, I just want to answer this one that came up too. Somebody said, does the small fiber show up in your blood work? So no, the test is done with skin biopsy. But in my case, the blood work is what showed autoantibodies that are sometimes associated with it, or that's thought to be autoimmune. So sort of, but the answer is no, but yes, you find there's other stuff. So when you start kind of putting all these pieces together, that starts to show at least, some kind of story as to what's going on. So my thought has always been that if anybody has small fiber, especially after an injection that changes your immune system, you'd want to look at those tests, the FGFR3 and TSHDS, to see if it goes along with it. doctors don't all even agree that it means anything or what it is, but you know, in my case, I had all the symptoms that match all the previous papers on that, and the test showed it, and then the treatment worked. So my story kind of lucks out in that way, but yeah, so hopefully that answers that. Is that generally small fiber itself is not tested in blood at all, but this autoimmune stuff goes along with it, is tested in blood. So, oh, and other thing too, Carla mentioned in the comments there that you can be positive on the sweat gland test. So getting a small fiber neuropathy test, you want to make sure that they also do check the sweat glands, which is, it's the same test, but I think they just check off a box on the paper. But there are some people that it'll show up in that, but not the what's epidermal or whatever the normal one is. So you do want to kind of cover all the bases to at least, you know, if you have the symptoms, to try to pinpoint something that's provable to the medical community.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, so there's a fun question. It says, is that a telly behind Mark?
Why, yes, it is. You can have a guitar in every room, right? And how that works.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I feel like we jump on these things and there's quite a few guitar players. The last one we did, there was a guitar player. I play a little guitar myself, Mark, Nick. I love it. What's kind of another interesting fact is when I'm feeling a little foggy, like brain foggy, I start playing the guitar. Oh, we got Margie. Or Margie, it looks like another guitar player. But when I'm playing the guitar, it helps with my brain fog because it's like I'm doing something different or something like that. And maybe it taps to another part of my brain. So it helps it. But yeah, kind of interesting. But yeah, we got a bunch of guitar players. It's awesome.
I have a question for everybody. I had a DNA test done, a very thorough DNA test. And this is done by a physician that works with this law firm that I'm dealing with. And his results, I think out of 50 people, 40% came back and we all tested positive for this particular gene that was causes thrombocytopenia. And he said that was just remarkable. These are all people who are vaccine injured. And it was the odds of that, having that many people test positive for this particular gene. So that may be something else people can look at to see if you're susceptible, and not that that's any excuse for any drug company to, you know, make excuses, but it may be help as far as getting any treatment or whatever. That's something to consider.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's something to look into. Well, we got a lot of guitar comments in the chat. It's awesome. I love it. Maybe we'll all have to get on here and have a jam session sometime. Real quick, Mark, what was that gene you mentioned?
I forget the name of the particular gene, but it showed that you have a propensity for thrombocytopenia.
Okay.
You know, blood clots or venous thrombocytopenia. So that was, you know, just the odds of having 40% out of just a random group of people,
right,
the vaccine injuries. It just, you know, more another clue, so to speak.
Yeah, something to look into. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. Well, guys, this has been great. Good conversation. I always love having these. But yeah, it looks like just, hey, listen to your body. Kind of sounds like a lot of people going the natural route has benefited them a lot. You know, so get that sleep, get that sun, get your vitamins, move the body the best you can. The body is an amazing thing, and is really good at healing itself. So looks like Bree's wondering if we can get a short list of highlights for each one of the panelists to put in the YouTube notes as well. So if you could just get some highlights, throw them in there, that'd be great. But thanks everyone for sharing. I think, like I said, the biggest things that helps me, and a lot of people mentioned, is the natural things, and then also is connection. And that's, kind of what we're doing here. So if you if you need anything, if you're running into anybody that's injured as well and they're not here and could benefit from this, I think that human connection is what really can kind of carry us through this when we don't know the answers, or we're getting, shot down by doctors, or told we don't know what we're doing, or whatever. Just reach out and connect with people. And I think that's one of the biggest things we can do is connect and help each other through this. So once again, thank you everybody for joining in, and we'll do this again soon. All right. Thanks.